We are awakening together. This is our weekly gathering we hold online. For more information, visit our website, awakening-together.org. We'd love to see you there.
Good morning, everyone. I hope we're all doing wonderful this morning. I saw your chat there, Rhoda, that tulips are trying to come up in Michigan. I'm in New Jersey and notice how the daffodils are trying to come out in February. So yeah, spring is right around the corner. So we're going to get started this morning with our purpose, our statement of our purpose. We are an assembly of equals, joined in common purpose, awakening to one true self. Within an appearance of many faiths, many cultures, and many symbols, we seek to discern one truth and to rest in its embrace. So today I picked for our core value number one, which is trust everyone is led by unique inner guidance to one experience called awakening, which is realization of one true self. We live this value by supporting one another on different paths of awakening. Today's message is all about the journey to inner freedom and also about following your own unique inner guidance. Turn it over to Anne. So now it's time for our first song, which is by the wonderful 70s group, The Impressions, and it's called People Get Ready. Thank you. All you need is faith to hear the Diesels. Thank you. So I invite you right now to just go with me into this holy space. And first, just acknowledging what's here right now. And that is a wonderful opportunity to be alive, awake, and aware. What's here before us now is true gratitude. Gratitude for the life that's in our bodies, right? The breath of life breathing us allows us to be here with one another, traveling together, an inward journey. Gratitude for all that is well and all of the experiences that we're having at this present moment. No need for labeling them good or bad. They just are. We're grateful for that. And gratitude for showing up this morning, following the guidance to check in and be here. That I'm eternally grateful and thankful for each and every one of you. And I'm grateful for this community and an opportunity to share this message with you all today. And so it is. Amen. So our reading today comes from the book entitled The Spirit of Harriet Tubman, Awakening from the Underground. It was written by Spring Washam, and Spring is a visionary meditation and Dharma teacher and an author. And before we get into the context of the reading, I really want to set it up. So for those of you who do not know who Harriet Tubman was, she was an American abolitionist and a social activist. She was born into slavery and she escaped and subsequently made some 13 missions to rescue slaves, including members of her own family and friends. And she did so using this network of anti-slavery activists and safe houses known as the Underground Railroad. And in this book that we're reading from today, Spring combines direct transmissions from Harriet and combine those messages with insightful explorations into Harriet's life and her legacy. And this book actually gives us some support and inspiration to deepen our own roots of resilience and become powerful conductors of love and truth in our own lives. With that, I will turn it over to Reverend Tawonda Chase, who will be doing our reading this morning. Wanda?
Thank you, Reverend Jackie. Good morning, everyone. Good to be here today. So I'll be reading chapter 7, The Inner Underground and the Promise of Freedom. Around this time, my conversations with Harriet started to change in unexpected ways. As she began sharing more and more of herself, her voice changed from that of a wise grandmother to the voice of a great spiritual teacher. It took me by surprise, and I was astonished by the depth of her wisdom and the new ways she would convey her thoughts. Early one morning, while I was sipping a giant mug of black tea, I had a profound session with her, revealing the brilliance of her mind and the depth of her soul. Harriet says, "Oh, child, I've always been underestimated, and I surprise folks all the time. It's my dark skin and my small size and my woman's body that makes people misjudge me. A Black woman born a slave who can't read or write does not fit most people's ideas of a great teacher. It's time for everyone to abandon their prejudices because a prophet can appear in any form at any time, even as the most neglected, overlooked, and forgotten among us." Harriet says, "Child, the Underground Railroad was a secret society, and I've been the fiercest protector of those secrets till now. But now the time has come to open the archives so that you and others can understand. There are levels, stages, and much deeper meanings behind the Underground Railroad. Let's start with the archives. Deep within the vaults of the Underground Railroad lived the archives, the preserved historical documents, testimonies, and eyewitness reports chronicling the life stories of Harriet Tubman and thousands of other ex-slaves. Not only do these archives provide a glimpse into the past, but they also affect the present. Since her physical death in 1913, Harriet's underground files have grown considerable as more facts and information about her life continues to surface in a steady and a mysterious flow. Just recently, they found her father, Ben Ross's home, and even one of his hand-carved pipes. Everything from movies to books, quotes, documents, and even old photos is appearing now. These files remind me of termas, a Tibetan Buddhist term for hidden treasure or secret teachings. In Tibet, Buddhist masters would hide certain teachings and practices for a future generation to discover. Sometimes these teachings would lie in waiting for hundreds of years until just the right moment, and then would appear in consciousness. When our minds are ready, teachings and the teacher magically appear. Harriet says, "Child, I have many files and papers in the historical underground archives, and these are very important to me." Light went off. While I was alive, my papers were always mixed up, lost, and out of order. It bothered me to no end, and it feels good that all these records are finally being set straight. I appreciate all the folks working on this. It's important for the future generations. Then, child, there are other files and archives about me in the underground that you haven't seen. few people have. They're stored in non-physical, unearthly locations in the air, the sky, the space, and within the mind stream in higher dimensions of consciousness. Some are in the spirit world. These other archives would be hard for some to believe. They chronicle my activities long before taking birth as a slave on a Maryland plantation. Suddenly, she began to move quickly, showing me visual images and explaining how and where her historical and spirit files were archived. I see gigantic libraries in space, thousands of miles high, with enormous file cabinets and stacks of documents. Then I see the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., where her historical documents are preserved in carefully marked Ziploc bags. I see small museums, libraries, and universities throughout the United States where portions of her records and copies of documents are kept. We're flying through past, present, and future at the same time. These records are not static or fixed. Quite the opposite. They're alive and fluid, constantly in motion. Everything we do in the present affects the past and the future. Harriet is passionate about this topic, and her explanation is like the Akashic records, often described as a vibrational record of every soul and its journey throughout space and time. Her explanations are also like teachings on karma, where our actions, both good and bad, are recorded and follow us from one life to the next. Harriet says, "Child, many great spirits, teachers, and powerful ancestors are opening their archives too. The whole spirit world has been flipped upside down as millions of files that were once stored away, even hidden, are being made available." Harriet explains that everything, including all the inner Underground Railroad files, are being released directly into the collective consciousness, where they can be accessed through the mind stream. It's a direct transmission of teachings being spread, and it's accessible for all those who are ready. Harriet says, "Child, the time is now, and the dynamic energy operating the underground is moving forward quickly. Most folks have fixed views about the spirit world and consciousness. I must encourage everyone to keep an open mind. There's so much more at work than what folks can understand right now. Child, there are different levels and stages to the Underground Railroad. On the outer level, the historical Underground Railroad was a secret passageway, concealed, hidden from view. It was the unseen corridor where enslaved human beings passed through on disguised routes. The symbolism, perfunctory, and archetypal meaning surrounding the underground is relevant for this moment in time. This invisible footpath that secretly carried countless undetected passengers along the road to freedom has both inner and outer meanings. According to Harriet, her escape from bondage and her role as the conductor were part of an outer journey. The actual historical Underground Railroad, with all its stops, exists in the third dimension of our form-based reality. This is the earth level of density, solidity, physical matter, and form. It's everything we can touch with our hands and see with our eyes. If you look around you, it's this level of reality you'll see. Our physical bodies, the furniture in our homes, our cars, and airplanes. Most of us live only within this dense world of form. Harriet calls it the outer level. The problem is when we believe that this outer level is all there is. Harriet is saying there's much more to the story here. Harriet says enslaved people had to live mostly on the outer level because we were physically in bondage. I was able to lead many to physical freedom, but then they had to deal with their minds. They accomplished the first step, to be free to live and choose, but that left them with half the story. It was half the journey. They were free, but not free. There are other steps, and we're at that stage in our understanding now, where many folks realize it's not just physical freedom that liberates us from bondage. It's the mind now that must be released. If we live and exist solely on the outer level of reality, everything is dense, painful, and ultimately unsatisfying. We're like prisoners let loose. We can move around. We can move all around, yet we still aren't free. We stay in bondage if we only live in the world of form and matter. The more we look at consciousness itself, the more we examine our minds directly. Things get lighter and lighter. The first level of understanding is when we stop looking outward and slowly, little by little, choose to look inward. Not everyone is ready for this level, but now there is a critical mass of people who are. Harriet says, "Oh, child, there's another underground railroad that operates through the mind and moves through consciousness. This is the inner level, and it's always been kept secret until folks are ready and could understand. This inner spirit underground railroad is very much alive and operates exactly the same as the historical railroad. The inner railroad runs on light, wind, air, and thought vibration. There are conductors, station agents, supporters, organizers, and of course, passengers. The routes are all so long, strenuous, and filled with challenges and obstacles. We need the same strong determination to walk through the wilderness and scale high peaks, but now it's an inner journey. The Underground Railroad operates its parallel realities. Some folks are moving through the outer railroad and others the inners. These are stages of understanding, and the outer and the inner journeys are distinguished by levels of awareness. It's the same battle for freedom and liberation. Just one path is on the earthly plane, earthly physical level, and the other is in the mind, connected to the sky, air, and spirit. Harriet says, when slaves escaped from the plantations in Maryland looking for freedom, they escaped to the northern cities of Pennsylvania, New York, and Canada. For me and so many of the passengers I conducted, these places represented the promised land. Child, our vision of the promised land while traveling on the Underground Railroad was a beautiful place where you could finally stop and take a long rest. Freed from bondage, without pain or suffering, you arrived in a heavenly realm filled with peace and joy and surrounded by God's love. This vision kept our people moving forward. When folks wanted to give up or they got tired on the underground, it was my job to remind them that a heavenly place awaited them. The term promised land was spoken by many in biblical times, during American slavery and during the civil rights movement in the United States. In his last speech given the night before he was assassinated, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "I've been to the mountaintop. I've seen the promised land," adding, "I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land." Dr. King's choice of words on his last day on earth carried a timeless message and one for this moment in time. Barack Obama, America's first Black president, titled his presidential memoir, A Promised Land, also invoking this message of our collective journey towards freedom. Harriet says, "Child, the promised land is not somewhere outside. It's not an outer destination. It's inside each of us. The promised land is a state of mind. It was promised and it's here, but we must enter the inner Underground Railroad to reach it, to realize it. In the inner dimension, it's a symbol of complete freedom. Child, when I was born in 1822, I could only work on the outer levels. I help people reach the outer level of the promised land, which they desperately needed. It wasn't the time for the inner level, so I kept quiet about it and did the work I needed to do. I didn't invent the inner Underground Railroad. It's a spirit that's been there forever. Child, there have been thousands of conductors, station agents, helpers, and guides throughout time and space in the form of light and energy. That's why I'm still conducting on the underground. I'm still leading groups of passengers, and our destination is always the promised land." Harriet said, "Child, to enter the inner underground, Harriet said, "Child, to enter the inner Underground Railroad, you must first want it, then be prepared to face all the obstacles that come up. You must always keep going. I'm trying to take you there to show you that the chains you need to break are the ones inside. I'm your guide, your teacher, your conductor. If you dedicate yourself to getting there, if you make a commitment that you'll never give up, child, you will succeed." Thank you.
Thank you. So, in the description for the homily today, I'd mentioned wanting to take you all on a journey to freedom through the inner Underground Railroad. And what does it mean to journey inward? I'm sure we've in this community heard that multiple times. When I looked at the definition of inward, it was defined this inside or interior or toward the inner being. So in the reading, Harriet says that the outer and the inner journeys are distinguished by levels of awareness. And as I contemplated that statement, this is what I got. The outer journey is that physical experience of life and all of its complexities, the belief in separateness and the belief in separation, the highs, the lows, what the ego terms as good and bad, the dualistic nature. The inner journey is a journey back to the self, that self with a capital S, a journey where all of the layers of what you believed yourself to be start to dissolve. And in its place, that realization of truth emerges. And that's what takes you over. So this means, as I contemplated it deeper, I'm not the Jackie I believed myself to be. And that we are all beyond the labels and the names, the experiences even. The journey along the inner Underground Railroad is certainly an inside job. So I mentioned earlier, before Tawonda started reading, that many people think of the Underground Railroad as an actual railroad. I mean, I believed that too at one point. But the name Underground Railroad was used metaphorically, so not literally. It was not an actual railroad, but it served the same purpose though. It transported people long distances. It also did not run underground, but it ran through homes and barns and churches and businesses. So in many respects, it was a network, is what it was. It was a network of people who helped enslaved people escape. In the book, also, Harriet transmits to Spring that the Underground Railroad operates through the mind and moves through consciousness. Here she says, we're working in the inner level, and that the spirit of the Underground Railroad is very much alive, and that it operates the same as that historical railroad, as we mentioned before. So when I really wanted to understand this deeper, I want to invite you to go along with me here. So I'd ask you to close your eyes and imagine if you were among those people, those enslaved people, traveling with Harriet. And Harriet says to you, it's time to go. What would you have to do? For me, I would have to let go of my fear to leave. Maybe you'd have to trust in what you could not see because you did not know where you were going. And there would have to be a commitment. I would have to commit to this journey towards freedom. Just putting myself in their shoes for a moment. What would be needed from me? So you can come back and open your eyes now. In the spiritual context, or in the context of today, I would need a commitment, just like they needed a commitment to see that journey through no matter what. I would need a commitment when we think about awakening. It requires a commitment. I see, or the experience I'm having is one where awakening is happening moment to moment, every day. And I'm experiencing that freedom. That where is it happening? The freedom is happening inside. It's happening within. And I would sum this up to say, in the same context of talking about freedom and commitment, there's no better freedom than living, loving what is right now, and not needing anything to be different than what it is. That's a different kind of freedom we're talking about. Freedom Harriet was speaking of, in some ways, was more around a physical freedom. We're talking about the inner freedom. And there is true freedom, if I would use that word, when you're okay with what is, as it is right now, and you don't need it to be any different. Because the bondage, if you will, that inner bondage comes when you need it to be different, when you're not okay with what is, and you want it to be. The only way you're going to be okay is if it changes, right? Well, that is a certain kind of maybe intellectual, mental bondage we have. But Harriet went on to say that, like, as Tawonda had read, that places in the North, like Pennsylvania, New York, and Canada, were considered the promised land. And we've heard that before, right? And they were considered the promised land because they were places where you could go and live as a free person. And Harriet says the promised land is not somewhere outside. It's not an outer destination. It's not a place you're going to die and wake up and go to heaven and you're in the promised land. And even though I know oftentimes when people have referenced that, that's actually what they mean, right? But here, What we're talking about and what was shared there, what Harriet transmitted to Spring was the promised land that you hear so much about. It's inside of each of us. And it's here right now. But we must enter it through that inner journey, on that inner Underground Railroad, per se, to reach it. So when I read that sentence and contemplated, what am I to know about what that is, right? Because I don't assume when I read things, I truly know what I'm reading. I wanted to go a deeper dive. And what came back to me was, it seems like, well, and this is what was coming to me, it seems like everything you are doing is happening out there, right? Whether that's in my life, going to retreats with other people or personal ones, facilitating retreats, daily contemplating, studying, meditating, all of that appears to be happening, on the outside. Yet all of these things that, and this was the wisdom coming back at me, all of these things you seem to do, but in actuality, they are the ways you are entering your own inner. You're traveling on your own inner railroad, if you will. Because all of these things drive you toward that inward place, toward that promised land, which is where love and peace and joy and happiness lives, living on the inside. And it's there already. I loved where she mentioned it's already here, right? And all of these things that appear to be happening out there that you do, actually it's what's supporting you from within. So one of the things that Harriet mentioned, that we need to experience the promised land, was commitment. A commitment to see the journey through, no matter what. No matter what. And what I know to be true is nobody can give you commitment. I can't give it to you. I can't wrap it up in a nice, pretty bow, give it to you, send it to you. I can't pay for it on PayPal for you. Nobody can do that. Commitment starts within. And what she was saying, in order to experience that, the promised land that way, where you live in the love and the joy and the peace and the happiness, you've got to be committed to see it through. So in this context, we're also talking about a commitment to your own awakening. And I would also add to that, honesty. We need to be honest with our own selves about our desire to awaken. So in fall, I hope I have my year right. It feels like it's right. In fall 2020, I was on retreat in Levita, and we were at this lake, which I can't remember the name of it, but those of you who live in Levita know what lake I'm talking about. And I remember we were sitting around in a group discussion, and we were contemplating and talking about some readings from Jan Fraser's book, The Freedom of Being at Ease with What Is. And one of the sections we were reviewing from the book talked about being okay, actually being okay with not wanting to wake up, right? And I really thought that was peculiar, because I was like, all this work we're doing here, isn't that where we're trying to go? And now you're telling me it's okay to not want to wake up? But here's the gist of what that was about. And I quote from the reading, I can't remember exactly which chapter it was in. It could have been, I can't remember it, but at any rate, in the reading, it stated, it's better to be real than torment yourself with wanting and failing to awaken, when that isn't actually what's alive in you as you're experiencing life. And I thought back to that because it really marries into commitment and being honest with yourself about where you are, right? Because it just doesn't do any of us any good, but mostly you, because you're the one experiencing what you're experiencing. But it doesn't do you any good to not be honest that, you know what, maybe I don't really want this right now. And that's okay. It truly is okay. But where I'm going with this is about the commitment part and being honest about where you are and where you want to go in your own commitment to wake up, to awaken. So when I think about my commitment, awaken, I thought that reading from Dan Fraser's book was important because it also helped me to say, okay, yeah, enough of this dilly-dallying around, you know, either make the commitment or don't. And if you don't, that's not a bad thing. But I knew for me, I really wanted to be committed to awakening. So this leads me to think about my spiritual aspiration. So, which was renewed, I would say. And we, participated in the Resolve for Truth retreat last month, in January. And my spiritual intuition, this is what I'm truly grateful for, because I knew, based upon what it is, that intelligence within me knew this was perfect for me for right now, for where I'm standing. And my spiritual aspiration is to trust God in all things, in all ways. And as I read that every day, because yeah, I do read it every day. That's part of my commitment. Sometimes it flips. Sometimes it's a trust God in all ways, in all things, but it's still part of the same message and a central theme for me about trusting. So it reminds me of letting go and trusting my own inner commitment. This is a clear surrendering for me to what is. It's a constant giving over, give it all over, give it over to Spirit, give everything over to Spirit, and a letting go and trusting that guidance in each and every moment. So this inner living, this inner experience that Harriet was speaking of, is that trusting, letting go of everything. And as she mentioned, she said in the book, not everybody was ready. But now what we're talking about is being free up here, not a physical freedom, right? And we are the ones. And if you didn't know, I'll raise my hand right now to let you know, yeah, we are the ones that's ready for the journey of that inner railroad to awakening. We're ready for it now, because if we weren't, many of you probably wouldn't even be on this call today. So as we journey together, I want to share one more thing from NTI Matthew chapter 18, and it's verses 1-8. And it says, I have told you before not to think for yourself. And I have asked you to lay yourself aside. It is this you must practice, because it is this you must do. One cannot maintain self-identity. Can everybody still hear me okay? It says my internet is unstable, okay. One cannot maintain self-identity and self-control and be healed of the self. Yet, one must be healed of self if one is to know the oneness of heaven as I am. I say to you, practice with me today. Do not think for yourself. Ask me in all things and leave all things to me. If we could make that inner commitment to do just that, then we are living it. Because that inner commitment that I see says, I don't have to know anything. And it is a way of saying, Uncle, okay, cool. I don't have to do it. I can just trust God in everything, in all ways, for all things. And that is being along that inner journey, that inner awakening that we are traveling and moving towards in whatever way and whatever speed that we're doing it in. Harriet also says, and I wanted to go back to this one point, that child, to enter the inner Underground Railroad, you must first want it, then be prepared to face all the obstacles that come up. You must always keep going. The chains you need to break are the ones inside. If you dedicate yourself to getting there, if you make a commitment that you'll never give up, child, you will succeed. And as I contemplated that, what came to me was every chain can be broken. Every chain can be broken. And what are the chains we're talking about? The chains of confusion that can try to live up here, can take residence and make a home, right? The chains of confusion, the chains of fear, the chains of indecisiveness, just like we talked about a second ago, like, I want to wake up, but I'm afraid, and I'm really not that committed to it. We're also talking about the chains that keep us tethered to listening to ego, to believing attention to that chattering mind, those chains. But Harriet says every chain can be broken. And we're talking about the ones that live up here, in here. So I leave you with this. It doesn't matter how long you've been on a spiritual journey. You keep going on your own inner Underground Railroad. You be like Harriet, who is quoted as saying, "I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger." So before I let you go, there's one other thing I want to share with you. And I'm going to share my screen here. Perfect. This is a quote from the Harriet Tubman's Museum in Cape May, New Jersey. And I actually had a chance to go over there yesterday because I'm in the area. But this quote says, God's time is always near. He set the North Star in the heavens. He gave me the strength in my limbs. He meant I should be free. And I would share with you that God meant for us all to be free. Each and every one of us live that freedom. So I thank you for listening. And I know it's time for our second song here, but before Sana plays our song, I want to remind you that you can donate to Awakening Together by clicking on the link that Sana will post, or by using the QR code in the sanctuary. The next song is called Stand Up by Cynthia Erivo, and it's a song that invites us all to stand up for our own inner freedom. Sana, will you play our next song? Thank you. Beautiful song. So at this time, I'd like to invite anyone who would like to share from today's homily.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. It was absolutely beautiful. I was just mesmerized by the reading and your teaching, and it was gorgeous. I have more to say, but obviously I can't, because that's what happens every time I try and talk around here anymore. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. And I see Ruby's hand.
That was absolutely powerful. It was complete. The one thing I'd like to say is you touched all the things that were very, very, very important to me. You touched commitment, consistency. That's one thing that is important to me, and honesty. And I remember way back, not very far away, I knew that I wasn't honest. I knew. But I remember back in 2011, and I read in NTI honesty, and it said honesty is acceptance. It does not fight. It does not try to change. It is honest because it knows what is meaningless is meaningless. And so I just knew that I didn't have that honesty. And I remember listening to Anne recently, and she had said how fearful at one time, I don't know if she is now, at one time she was. And that is what I was afraid. I was fearful of being honest. I didn't know that if I was honest, then I would just disappear. And so I just want to thank you for your message. It was powerful. It opened up my soul, my heart, my everything. So thank you very much. Let's see if there's something else I want to say. You just said it all. And Matthew, you said Matthew, and the one thing I'm doing Inner Ramana, and it says, I don't know if this was in Inner Ramana, but it was somewhere. It said, give your mind to me. And you have to be committed and give it all to me. And you guys know who me is. Thank you very much, Jackie. That was beautiful.
Thank you, Ruby. Wonderful. Yes, Jacqueline.
Thank you. Thank you for your lovely message. Thank you, Tawonda, for reading. It was just beautiful. It occurs to me that we don't always, and I don't know about often, I was going to say we don't often call this a journey to freedom. But that's exactly what it is. And when we recognize it is freedom that we are seeking, all that other stuff just comes in naturally, doesn't it? The commitment, the willpower, the recognition of the resources, it's all there when we recognize freedom for what it is. So thank you so much, Reverend Jackie. It was a beautiful sermon. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I see your hand up, John.
Good morning. I remember being a kid in school and hearing about the Underground Railroad, and you'd hear about the historical aspects of it. But what kind of what's coming up for me is there's a mental picture with that that's starting to form. And it's more about the concept of a railway. And if you've ever been on a train, there's a vibration that happens when you're on there. And it's just a steady, long, some people find it relaxing, some people don't. I mean, I haven't been on a lot of trains, but I've been on a few. And what I kind of realized is that there's also a vibration that occurs on this path for me that I feel and hear. And that vibration is most noticeable when it stops. And it's usually that I would associate with a feeling of depression. It would just be like, ooh, there's this hole now where this vibration used to be. And what I became aware of in this homily today was that vibration is just that. It's that engine that keeps us moving along this path. It's there constantly. And like I said, it's most noticeable when it's gone. And I understand what that silence is. It's weird. It's silence with the vibration, if you know what I'm saying. And I can see that with this whole talk of Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railway. This is just our railway that is bringing us home, and it's most noticeable when we stop on our path, at least for me. So thank you for at least helping me to see that from a different perspective. I appreciate it, and it explains a lot. And yeah, just it's so much more comfortable going with that vibration. And I thank you for that image.
Thank you, John. It's a beautiful image. Thank you. It's beautiful. All right. Thank you all so much. Okay. Thank you so much. Blessings, everybody. Take care.
Been watching our online gathering. It happens weekly on Sundays at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. To join us live in the sanctuary, visit our website, awakening-together.org. You'll want to click on Online Sanctuary in the main menu, and then in the drop-down menu, look for How to Enter the Sanctuary. Right there at the top of the page is a clickable link. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary and join with you in fellowship. Thank you again for watching. Also, please know that if you'd like to stay connected via the Awakening Together channel here on YouTube, you can subscribe and hit the bell for more notifications. We hope to see you in the sanctuary.